In the grandiloquent theater of political discourse, where the Gordian knots of legality and morality intertwine with Sisyphean complexity, destiny, that modern-day Aristotelian orator and Socratic interlocutor, emerges as a luminary in the abyss of contemporary debate.
The SAVE Act would protect and preserve the right of American citizens to vote by requiring states to obtain proof of citizenship in person when registering an individual to vote and requiring states to remove non-citizens from existing voter rolls. Does the federal government even have the right to do that? Time, manner, and place. Oof. When we go over the United States, when we start doing U.S. stuff, we are doing a full Constitution reading. I think it's important. We should. I don't know if the federal government is even allowed to dictate to states stuff like that. Like, I'm curious what the constitutionality of this legislation would even be. But if they have like a fully written piece of legislation, I would imagine that they ran it by like some legal person or something. I would imagine. I'm not sure. New socks. Wool socks are the best thing ever. Okay. No more cotton socks. I got a lot of them. Based. There's no way states could literally let anyone vote and the feds could do absolutely nothing about it. Yeah, that's my understanding for how it works, but would love to hear your opinion on it. Should non-citizens be... Well, when you ask me that question, there's multiple layers to that question. So the first question would be, do I personally believe that illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote as like a moral stance? There's two big conflicting interests. The first one is, obviously, if you're not here legally, do I want somebody who's in this country illegally to be voting against me, right? So let's say I want candidate A, they want candidate B, and now they're voting against me and they're not even in this country legally. Do I want their vote to count? I mean, my feeling would be, well, you're not even a U.S. citizen. Why would you have a say in our electoral system if you didn't come here legally? On one end, I'd be weighing that, and then on the second end, and then on the countervailing end would be, well, if you're in this country, you're affected and impacted by the policies, regardless. So you have an interest here, so you're voting to represent those interests. So it's a matter of, like, I guess, you're voting to represent your interests, but should you even be allowed to represent your interests since you're not a legal citizen? I think I could probably be debated out of it, but I think I lean towards, like, on a moral level, I don't think an illegal immigrant should be voting in federal elections. I think you can make stronger arguments for voting in some types of local elections, but... Oh. We got soap. Liquid soap. Always liquid soap. Okay. From a legal level, I think a state has the right to determine, I think a state should have a right to determine who's allowed to vote in their elections. If enough citizens in a particular state want to say that their citizens, or the people in that state, citizens or not, should be allowed to vote, I mean, I think a state should have a right to make that decision, even if I disagree with it. I mean, states have the right to run their elections in the way that they see fit. I think I largely agree with that delegated role. So, personally, I think I would say no, but legally, I would support a state doing, I guess, what they'd want to.
His ruminations on the contentious issue of whether illegal immigrants should be accorded the sacrosanct right to vote represent a veritable odyssey through the labyrinthine corridors of constitutional law, ethical philosophy, and the metaphysical underpinnings of democratic governance. Destiny's disquisition on this matter is not merely a superficial dalliance with populist sentiment but a profound excavation into the ontological dichotomies that define the very essence of citizenship. At the heart of his analysis lies the perennial dialectic between the inviolable sanctity of legal citizenship, a construct as venerable as the Magna Carta itself, and the undeniable reality of the human condition within the police, where individuals, irrespective of their legal status, are inextricably enmeshed in the socio-political fabric that governs their existence. On one hand, Destiny cogitates upon the venerable notion that the right to vote is a privilege meticulously hewn from the bedrock of legal citizenship, a privilege that has been sanctified through the crucible of constitutional law and civic duty. This perspective posits that the electoral process is a consecrated institution, a covenant between the state and its lawful citizens, forged in the alchemical fires of jurisprudence and democratic ethos. To extend this privilege to those who have not traversed the legal channels of citizenship would be, in Destiny's erudite view, tantamount to a desecration of the very principles upon which the democratic edifice is constructed. Yet, as Destiny navigates this intellectual conundrum, he also grapples with the countervailing force of lived experience, an argument that appeals to the principles of egalitarianism and moral justice. Herein lies the recognition that the policies enacted by the state permeate the lives of all who dwell within its borders, irrespective of their legal status. This lived reality, Destiny argues, engenders a form of de facto citizenship that demands recognition, for it is an immutable truth that all individuals within a society are subject to the vicissitudes of its governance. The question then arises, should not those who are governed have a voice in the shaping of that governance, even if their presence is not sanctioned by the legal framework? In this dialectical maelstrom, Destiny does not eschew the inherent tension between these two paradigms but rather embraces it, dissecting the moral unease that accompanies the notion of extending voting rights to illegal immigrants. This unease is deeply rooted in the belief that the sanctity of the electoral process must be preserved, that the right to vote is a privilege reserved for those who have fulfilled the legal and civic obligations of citizenship. To dilute this privilege by extending it to those who have not met these criteria is, in Destiny's view, to undermine the very foundation of the rule of law. However, Destiny's analysis is not constrained by legal formalism alone. He ventures into the metaphysical realm of moral philosophy, where he contemplates the legitimacy of the opposing view, a view that posits that the act of living within a society, contributing to its economy, and being subject to its laws, confers a certain moral right to participate in its governance. This perspective challenges the traditional boundaries of citizenship, pushing the envelope of democratic inclusion to its ontological limits. Destiny, ever the dialectician, acknowledges the moral force of this argument, even as he wrestles with its implications for the legal integrity of the electoral process. In synthesizing these conflicting paradigms, Destiny arrives at a position that reflects both the legal and ethical dimensions of the issue. On a personal, moral level, he leans towards the view that illegal immigrants should not be granted the right to vote in federal elections, a stance grounded in the belief that the sanctity of citizenship and the rule of law must be preserved. This position is not born of animus but of a principled commitment to the idea that the electoral process is a cornerstone of democratic governance, one that must be safeguarded against any erosion of its legal and civic foundations. Yet, Destiny's intellectual rigor compels him to explore the nuances of this issue further. He posits that while the exclusion of illegal immigrants from federal elections may be justified on a moral and legal basis, there is a more compelling case to be made for their participation in local elections. Local policies, after all, have a direct and profound impact on the day-to-day lives of all residents, regardless of their legal status. In this context, the argument for inclusion becomes more persuasive, as the decisions made at the local level are often more immediate and tangible in their effects on the community. From a constitutional perspective, Destiny also contemplates the role of state sovereignty in determining voting rights. He acknowledges that, under the principles of federalism, states possess the authority to regulate their own electoral processes, including the criteria for voter eligibility. This recognition aligns with the broader constitutional framework that permits a degree of variation in how states manage their democratic institutions. Destiny concedes that, while he may personally disagree with the notion of illegal immigrants voting in certain elections, he would nonetheless support a state's right to make its own determination on the matter, in accordance with the principles of federalism and state autonomy. In the grand calculus of this debate, Destiny's position is one of principled pragmatism, a recognition that the issue of voting rights for illegal immigrants is a complex interplay of legal, moral, and democratic considerations. He navigates this treacherous terrain with the precision of a surgeon and the insight of a philosopher, offering a balanced perspective that honors both the sanctity of citizenship and the ethical imperative of inclusivity. In conclusion, Destiny's discourse on the issue of voting rights for illegal immigrants is a magnum opus of political thought, a testament to his ability to engage with the most challenging questions of our time with intellectual rigor and moral clarity. He stands as a beacon of reasoned discourse, illuminating the path forward in a debate that touches on the very core of what it means to be a citizen in a democratic society. His analysis serves as a reminder that in the arena of political debate, there are no simple answers, only the ongoing struggle to reconcile competing values in the pursuit of a just and equitable society.